romantic. It all began on an ordinary evening, the kind of evening where the world felt quiet, yet the heart carried the weight of the day. Alina sat on her bed, the faint glow of her phone illuminating her face as she scrolled aimlessly through social media. She wasn't searching for anything in particular, just passing time, letting her mind wander after a long day filled with work, deadlines, and responsibilities that seemed endless. She sighed, rubbing her tired eyes. The endless stream of posts and pictures felt repetitive, but then a tiny notification popped up at the top of her screen. It was a direct message from someone she didn't recognize. The name read, Arman. Her first instinct was hesitation. Who was this stranger? Another random person sliding into her inbox? She opened it anyway, expecting something generic or forced. But instead, it was simple, just a small, thoughtful line. "Hi, I liked your thoughts on that post." Alina blinked at the message, her eyebrows slightly raised. She had commented earlier on a thought-provoking post about life choices, not expecting anyone to notice. Most people scrolled past such things without caring. Yet here was someone who not only noticed, but also chose to reach out, without pretense, without unnecessary lines. She thought about ignoring it, but something about the simplicity felt genuine. So she typed back, "Oh, thank you. I didn't think anyone actually read that." That reply was supposed to end the conversation, but it didn't. Within minutes, Arman responded again, this time with a smiley face and a question. "I did. You write in a way that feels real. Do you always share such thoughts?" The words made her pause. It wasn't the usual, "Hi, how are you?" It wasn't an empty compliment either. It was curious, warm, and a little different. So she continued. That night was started as a random message, turned into a conversation that lasted hours. They talked about books they loved, music that calmed them, and how sometimes silence says more than words. The more they spoke, the easier it became, like slipping into a rhythm that had been waiting for them all along. Alina was surprised at herself. Normally, she kept conversations short with strangers, careful not to get drawn into pointless small talk. But with Arman, it didn't feel like small talk at all. It felt like two old friends catching up after years apart, laughing at silly jokes, and sharing little pieces of their souls without hesitation. Midnight crept past silently. Her room was quiet, but her heart was strangely alive. She glanced at the clock and widened her eyes. It was already 2 a.m. How had time slipped away so quickly? She typed, "Oh wow, I didn't even realize how late it got. I should probably sleep." Arman replied almost instantly, "Same here. I didn't notice either. Guess that happens when a conversation feels right." Alina smiled at the screen. She didn't reply this time, but she couldn't stop herself from reading his last line again and again before finally putting her phone aside. Something about it lingered in her mind even as she closed her eyes. The next morning, she woke up earlier than usual, almost unconsciously checking her phone, and there it was, another message waiting from Arman. "Good morning. Hope you have a good day ahead." Simple, yet it made her smile before her day even began. From then on, it became a rhythm. Morning greetings, random jokes during the day, and long conversations at night. They learned about each other's worlds, the struggles and the dreams, the small joys and the unspoken fears. Arman had a way of listening without judgment, and Alina had a way of expressing herself with honesty. Together, they built something invisible yet powerful. At that moment, neither of them thought about the future. Neither of them tried to label what they had. It was just pure connection, unexpected, beautiful, and natural. Looking back, Alina one day would realize that the random notification on her phone wasn't random at all. It was fate in disguise, a new beginning wrapped in simplicity. For now, it was just the start. A stranger had said hi, and in that hi, a whole story waited to be written. Romantic. Days slipped into weeks, yet neither Alina nor Arman noticed how quickly time was passing. What had started as a random message had now become the most important part of their days. For Alina, her phone was no longer just a screen filled with notifications. It was a window to a voice that made her smile, laugh, and even think deeper about life. She caught herself grinning at her phone more than anything else, her friends often asking why she looked so happy staring at nothing. Armin, on the other hand, found himself waiting impatiently for the little ping of her reply. His heart raced every time her name lit up his screen. He would sometimes type a message, erase it, type again, and then finally send it, wanting his words to feel as perfect as the way he felt when he read hers. For the first time in a long time, he felt alive in conversations that didn't feel forced or shallow. Their chats soon moved beyond the casual, "How was your day?" or "What are you doing?" They began to dig deeper, like explorers discovering hidden treasures within each other's hearts. "Do you ever wonder," Alina typed one evening, "if the version of us online is more real than the version we show people in person?" Armin paused before replying. He admired how she had a way of asking questions that weren't ordinary, questions that made him reflect. Finally, he typed back, "I think here, with you, I'm more myself than I've ever been. Maybe that's why this feels different." Her cheeks warmed as she read the words, though no one was around to notice. She smiled into the quiet of her room, thinking how unusual it was that a stranger could make her feel so understood. One night, their conversation stretched into the early hours, the kind where time dissolves and the world outside ceases to exist. They shared childhood memories, Armin talking about the small town where he grew up, his favorite cricket matches in the streets with his friends, and the way his mother's cooking always made him feel at home. She shared how she spent her evenings curled up with books, how writing was her escape, and how sometimes silence was her only comfort. There were moments of laughter, too, Armin teasing her about her habit of sending long voice notes, and Alina laughing at the way he misspelled words in a hurry, calling it his typing accent. The small imperfections made their bond feel even more human, more real. But somewhere between the jokes and the late-night confessions, something else grew. Trust. Alina found herself telling Armin things she rarely admitted to anyone else. She spoke of her fears, the way she sometimes doubted herself, and how she worried about not being enough. Armin, instead of brushing it off, listened. And when he replied, his words were gentle, steady, like a hand reaching out in the dark. "Alina, you don't have to be enough for anyone. You just have to be yourself, and trust me, that's already more than enough." Her eyes stung with unexpected tears. No one had ever said it like that. For Armin, too, Alina became a space where he could be vulnerable. He admitted his struggles, the weight of expectations on his shoulders, the fear of failing, and the loneliness he often masked with humor. And she listened, not with pity, but with understanding. She didn't try to fix him, she simply reminded him he wasn't alone. Day by day, their conversations began to feel less like words on a screen and more like echoes of a deeper connection. Alina would sometimes put her phone aside, only to pick it up again within minutes, eager to see if he had said something new. Armin would delay his work just to keep talking, even if it meant losing sleep. Neither complained, because every message felt worth it. It wasn't just chatting anymore, it was sharing. It was opening doors they had kept closed for so long. It was laughter that healed and silence that comforted. And somewhere in the middle of it all, both of them realized a simple truth. This didn't feel like meeting someone new, it felt like coming home.
There comes a moment in every connection when words on a screen no longer feel enough. For Alina and Arman, that moment arrived quietly but powerfully. They had already spent weeks exchanging messages, voice notes, and inside jokes, yet something always felt incomplete, like music without sound, like laughter without an echo. One late evening, their conversation lingered on the screen, both of them typing and erasing, as if waiting for the feather to take the next step. Finally, Armand typed a short, hesitant message. "Alina, can I call you?" Alina stared at the text, her heart thudding. She wasn't used to phone calls with new people. Typing felt safe, easy to hide behind. a call was different. It was real, raw, and personal. She hesitated, fingers hovering above the keyboard. After what felt like forever, she replied with a simple, "Okay." Within seconds, her phone rang. The sound startled her, and for a moment she almost considered not picking up. But curiosity, and a quiet pull inside her, won. She swiped the screen and brought the phone to her ear. "Hello?" she whispered, her voice cautious. "Hi," came Armand's voice, warm, deep, and slightly nervous. The moment she heard him, something shifted inside her. She had imagined his voice before, but this was different. It carried a warmth that reached her heart instantly, as if it belonged to someone she had known forever. For a second, there was silence, both unsure how to begin. Then, as though a switch flipped, they burst into laughter at the awkwardness of it all. "So, this is what you sound like," Alina teased, her shyness slowly melting. "And you," Armand replied, chuckling, "sound way sweeter than I imagined. Honestly, I thought you'd sound, I don't know, more serious." "Serious? Really?" She laughed, pretending to be offended. "Well, sorry to disappoint you." "Disappoint? Alina, if this is disappointment, then I want more of it," he said quickly. And though he meant it playfully, his words left her blushing in the quiet of her room. What began as awkward giggles soon turned into a flow of conversation more natural than either expected. They talked about their days, mimicked each other's accents, and teased about silly things. Armand even hummed a song off-key just to make her laugh, and she ended up laughing so hard that she had to cover her face with a pillow. But in between the laughter, there were softer moments too. Times when their voices dropped, and the conversation turned into confessions, secrets and dreams that seemed easier to say aloud than to type. "I don't usually open up to people this quickly," Alina admitted, her voice quiet. "I know. I don't either. But with you, it feels different, like I don't have to pretend." That silence between them wasn't uncomfortable. It was full, rich, carrying emotions that didn't need words. Hours passed unnoticed. The world outside fell asleep, but they were wide awake, wrapped in each other's voices. Every laugh, every pause, every sigh felt like threads weaving them closer together. At one point, Alina yawned, embarrassed. She said, "I think I'm keeping you up too late." "Keeping me up?" Armand chuckled. "Alina, I could listen to you forever and not mind losing sleep." Her heart skipped at his words. She didn't reply, but her silence spoke volumes. Before they knew it, dawn had crept into the sky. Birds began chirping, faint light spilling through Alina's curtains. When she finally glanced at the time, her eyes widened. "Oh my God, it's 5:30 a.m. "Already?" Armand sounded just as surprised. "Wow, time really does fly when you're talking to the right person." There was a pause, a soft one, where neither wanted to end the call. Finally, Alina whispered, "We should probably sleep." "Yeah," Armand agreed reluctantly. "But thank you." "For what?" she asked. "For tonight. For your voice, for making me feel like home." Her chest tightened at his words. She didn't know what to say, so she simply smiled into the phone, her silence carrying the answer. When they finally hung up, both lay in their beds staring at the ceiling, hearts too full to sleep. It wasn't just a phone call. It was the beginning of something more, something deeper, something they both knew they couldn't ignore anymore.
The days after their first call felt different. Messages weren't just texts on a screen anymore. They carried voices, tones, and the lingering warmth of laughter that had echoed through their late-night conversations. Alina found herself smiling at random moments during the day, her friends teasing her about the way her eyes lit up whenever her phone buzzed. Armin, too, felt restless without her. He would check his phone far too often, typing out little things that reminded him of her, only to erase them, waiting for the right moment to share. What had started as friendship was quietly becoming something else, something neither had planned, but both felt growing stronger with each passing day. One evening, Armin stared at his chat window longer than usual. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, hesitating. He had been holding it back for days now, the feeling he couldn't quite explain, the emotion that slipped into his heart uninvited yet refused to leave. Finally, gathering his courage, he typed, "Alina, I don't know why, but I feel something for you."
The moment he hit send, his heart pounded. What if she didn't feel the same? What if she pulled away? He tossed his phone on the bed, running a hand through his hair, both anxious and hopeful. On the other side, Alina froze. Her eyes widened as she read her words over and over again. She could feel her cheeks warming, her pulse quickening. She placed the phone down for a moment, taking a deep breath. She had felt it too. The strange flutter in her chest, the joy in their conversations, the comfort in his presence. But admitting it out loud was terrifying. Finally, with trembling fingers, she typed back, I feel it too, Armin, but it scares me. I've never trusted someone I haven't met in person. What if this isn't real? She stared at her screen, her heart torn between fear and the undeniable truth. Armin's reply came quickly, as though he had been waiting for her words. I get it. I'm scared too. But Alina, the way I feel when I talk to you, it's real to me. I don't know how else to explain it. She bit her lip, rereading his message, her heart softening. His honesty disarmed her. He wasn't trying to convince her with grand promises. He was simply sharing what was in his heart. That night, their conversation grew deeper. They spoke of love, what it meant to them, what they feared, and what they hoped it could be. Alina admitted that she had always been cautious, someone who built walls around her heart. She had been hurt before, and the thought of opening up again terrified her. Armin listened patiently. He didn't rush to break down her walls. Instead, he reassured her gently. I don't want you to trust me overnight. Let's take it slow. All I know is, I want to be here, with you, no matter how long it takes. Those words settled into her heart like a promise, unspoken yet powerful. Over the next few days, their chats carried a new softness. Every good morning felt warmer. Every good night lingered longer. They teased each other, shared songs that reminded them of one another, and sometimes just sat in silence on call, listening to each other breathe, as if that was enough. But with the sweetness came vulnerability. Alina would sometimes overthink, worrying about the future, about the possibility that everything could crumble. Armin sensed it, and instead of brushing it aside, he reminded her gently, we don't have to define this right now. Let's just feel it. Whatever this is, it's ours. And slowly, Alina began to believe him. One night, as they lay in their separate rooms miles apart, both staring at their screens, Alina typed, I don't know what this will turn into, but Armin, I'm glad you messaged me that day. His reply came almost instantly. Me too, Alina. That one message changed everything. In that moment, both of them knew. This wasn't just virtual. It wasn't just words on a screen or voices over a call. It was something real, something alive, something that had already rooted itself deeply in their hearts. And while the world outside might call it just online, to them, it was the beginning of love.
Months of messages, late-night calls, and confessions had led to this moment. Yet nothing could truly prepare Alina for the swirl of emotions she felt as she stood outside the cafe door. Her palms were damp, her heart raced, and she kept adjusting her scarf nervously, trying to look calm even though her insides were trembling. She had imagined this day countless times. Sometimes she thought she would walk in confidently, smile, and say something witty. Other times she imagined herself frozen, speechless, overwhelmed by the reality of finally meeting Armand. Now that the day had arrived, she realized it was both. Her excitement and her fear collided, leaving her breathless. She pushed the door open. The faint chime of the bell above the cafe door rang softly, almost like an announcement that something special was about to begin. The air smelled of coffee beans and freshly baked pastries, the soft murmur of conversations blending with the clinking of cups. Her eyes scanned the room quickly, nervously. And then she saw him. Armand was sitting at a corner table, his fingers tapping lightly against the coffee cup in front of him. His posture was restless, as if he had been waiting for this moment just as anxiously as she had. When their eyes finally met, something inside her shifted. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cinematic. It was simply right. As though all the waiting, all the doubts, all the late-night questions had led to this one moment of quiet certainty.
Armand stood up quickly, almost knocking over his chair in his nervousness. His smile was shy but genuine, the kind that made his eyes soften. "Hi," he said, his voice carrying both relief and nervous laughter. "Finally." Alina couldn't help but laugh softly, her nerves easing just a little. "Finally," she echoed, her voice almost a whisper. For a second, they just stood there, smiling like two people who didn't quite know what to do with the intensity of the moment. Then Armand gestured to the seat across from him. "Please sit." As she sat down, Alina noticed the little detail she hadn't seen before. The way his fingers fidgeted when he was nervous, the warmth in his eyes that no photograph or video call had ever captured, the way his smile lingered even after he spoke. And Armand, too, was quietly observing. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear, how her laughter sounded even brighter in person, and how her presence filled the space effortlessly. The first few minutes were filled with nervous giggles, stolen glances, and attempts to act casual. But soon, the same ease they always shared began to seep in. It was as though their phones had simply disappeared and the comfort they had built online had found a home in reality. "Do you realize," Armand said at one point, his voice soft but playful, "that I already know so much about you, yet meeting you feels completely new?" Alina smiled, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. "I know. It's strange, isn't it? Like, I feel safe with you, but I'm still discovering you at the same time." Their words were honest, unpolished, carrying the vulnerability of two people who had finally stepped into each other's worlds. They spent hours in that cafe, talking, laughing, sharing glances that spoke louder than words. Every time Alina looked up, she found Armand already looking at her. And every time he caught her gaze, he smiled as though he couldn't quite believe she was real. At one point, there was a pause. Not awkward, but full. Armand leaned slightly closer, his voice barely above a whisper. "You know, I was so scared this wouldn't feel the same, that maybe it was all just in our heads." "And now?" Alina asked, her heart holding its breath. "Now," he said with a smile that reached his eyes, "I know it's even better." That moment erased every fear she had carried. This wasn't just virtual anymore. This wasn't just late-night calls or messages. This was real, tangible, alive. By the time they finally stepped out of the cafe, the sky was painted with the soft hues of evening. The city moved around them, cars, people, noises. But for Alina and Armand, the world felt quieter, slower. As they walked side by side, their hands brushed lightly, neither daring to hold the other's just yet. But in that fleeting touch, in that stolen glance, they both knew they were exactly where they belonged. Reality, as it often does, crept in slowly. After the sweetness of their first meeting, life reminded them that love was not always easy. Armand and Alina lived in different cities, miles apart, with responsibilities that often left them exhausted. She had her career, demanding long hours, while he juggled work and family commitments. The distance between them wasn't just about geography. It was about time zones of daily life, schedules, and the unspoken weight of uncertainty. Some nights, Alina sat by her window staring at the glowing city lights, phone pressed to her ear. "I hate this," she whispered one evening. "I hate that I can't just see you whenever I want. I hate that I miss you more than I can handle." On the other end, Armand sighed, his voice steady but filled with quiet longing. "I know, Alina. I feel it too. But listen, distance doesn't mean we're apart. Every call, every message, every time you laugh on the phone, I'm there with you. And one day, this won't be our reality anymore." His words wrapped around her like comfort, reminding her that this wasn't a weakness in their story, but a test of how much they meant to each other. Still, the world around them wasn't always kind. Friends questioned Alina. "How can you trust someone you met online? What if it doesn't last?" Her heart wavered sometimes, But then she remembered the way Armand looked at her that day in the cafe, how his presence had erased every doubt. That wasn't something she could explain to others. It was something only she felt deep inside. Armand, too, faced questions from people who didn't understand. Long distance never works, some said. Find someone closer. But he would just shake his head with a quiet smile. They didn't know what he knew, that when he heard Alina's voice after a tiring day, the miles melted away. They didn't know that her messages carried more warmth than most conversations he had face to face. To fight the heaviness of distance, they created little rituals, good morning texts that became a habit, silly memes shared during lunch breaks, long video calls before sleep. Sometimes they even cooked the same meal while on call, pretending they were eating together. On weekends, if schedules aligned, they would fall asleep on the phone, the sound of each other's breathing a strange but soothing lullaby. And then there were the surprises, the lifelines that kept them going. Once, when Alina had a particularly rough week, she walked into her favorite cafe only to find Armand sitting there, smiling nervously with a coffee already waiting for her. She froze in shock before rushing to him, her eyes shining. "You didn't tell me you were coming," she exclaimed, almost unable to believe he was real. "I wanted to remind you," he said softly, "that no distance can stop me from being with you when you need me." Moments like those became their anchor. Every challenge, every doubt, every tear shed in frustration was met with a deeper certainty. This wasn't temporary, this wasn't fragile. Their love wasn't about convenience, it was about commitment. One night, as they lay on a video call, both staring at their screens in comfortable silence, Alina whispered, "Do you think we'll make it?" Armand looked at her through the pixelated glow of his phone and replied firmly, "We already are." And in that answer lay the truth of their story. They realized love wasn't about living in the same city or seeing each other every day. Love was about showing up, even when it was hard, even when it meant waiting, even when the world doubted them. For them, distance didn't weaken the bond, it strengthened it. It taught them patience, loyalty, and the beauty of effort. Because in the end, love isn't measured by miles. It's measured by how far two hearts are willing to go for each other.
Romantic. Time has a way of making the extraordinary feel ordinary once it settles into routine. But for Armand and Alina, their love never lost its magic. What began as late-night texts and hesitant calls had grown into years of shared memories, struggles, and triumphs. The distance that once tested them had eventually faded away, replaced by a life they built side by side. On the morning of their wedding, Alina stood before the mirror, adjusting the final touches of her dress. She caught her own reflection, and for a fleeting moment, she saw the girl she used to be. The girl who once rolled her eyes at random messages from strangers. The girl who almost didn't reply that night. She smiled softly, tears pricking her eyes. Who would have thought that a simple hi could change the course of her life forever? Meanwhile, in another room, Armin paced back and forth, his heart thumping in his chest. He had faced many big days in his life, graduations, job offers, responsibilities, but nothing compared to this. Today, he wasn't just becoming a husband. He was finally stepping into the forever he had always dreamed of with her. The ceremony was intimate, filled with laughter, teary eyes, and the presence of people who had watched their love story unfold with equal parts doubt and wonder. Some of the very friends who once questioned their online bond now whispered to each other, amazed at how genuine it had become. As the vows were exchanged, the world seemed to blur around them. Armin held Alina's hands, his voice steady yet emotional. "I never thought a simple message would give me my forever," he whispered, his eyes locked onto hers. Alina's heart swelled, her lips trembling as tears streamed down her face. She whispered back, just loud enough for him to hear, And I'm glad I replied that day. Those words carried the weight of years, the sleepless nights spent on calls, the miles that once stood between them, the countless moments when they chose to stay despite the struggles. Every challenge, every tear, every moment of longing had led to this one instant of undeniable truth. They were exactly where they were meant to be. Later that evening, as the celebrations quieted and the two of them finally had a moment alone, they sat together under the soft glow of fairy lights. Alina leaned her head against Armin's shoulder, her fingers tracing lazy patterns on his hand. She said, "Do you realize that if either one of us had made a different choice that night, none of this would exist?" Armin chuckled, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "I don't want to think about that. All I know is I sent that message, you replied, and somehow the universe conspired to bring us here." They sat in silence for a while, watching the stars twinkle above them. Unlike the nervous silences of their early days, this one was full, safe, comforting, the kind that comes when two people know they no longer need words to fill the spaces between them. Their journey wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't effortless. There were moments of doubt, days when distance weighed heavily, times when the world seemed determined to pull them apart. But what made their story beautiful wasn't perfection, it was persistence. The choice, again and again, to love despite the odds. Years later, when people asked them how they met, they would smile at each other knowingly before answering. Some laughed in disbelief, others listened with wide eyes, and a few even admitted it gave them hope. For Armand and Alina, their story became more than just their own. It became proof that sometimes the most unexpected beginnings lead to the most extraordinary forevers. And as they walked hand in hand into the next chapter of their lives, they carried with them the simple truth that had started it all. Love doesn't always arrive the way you expect it. Sometimes it arrives quietly, hidden in a notification, a stranger's words, a simple hi. But when it's real, when it's true, it grows into something lasting, something worth fighting for, something eternal. For Alina and Armand, that random message had become a lifelong journey. From screens to feelings, from distance to closeness, from strangers to soulmates. This was their love story, and it was only the beginning.